I have never been more frustrated with a piece of machinery in my entire 300-cycle career as chief engineer of the Galactic Science Fleet. Here I stand, in the most advanced hangar bay of Station Aurora, staring at what should be the crown jewel of our civilization, the Nova Spirit. "Come on, you beautiful nightmare," I mutter, my antennae twitching with annoyance as I tap commands into the console for the 47th time today. "Just turn on." The ship sits there, gleaming under the hangar lights, its quantum crystal hull reflecting rainbows across the bay walls. It's perfect, absolutely perfect, from its revolutionary neural interface cockpit to its reality-bending drive core. And yet it refuses to activate. Engineer Razix Pontara, the station AI, announces through the speakers, "Your blood pressure is elevating beyond recommended levels." "Thank you for your concern," I snap back, my scales shifting from their usual calm blue to an agitated purple. I hadn't noticed. Captain Lena Starweaver walks into the hangar, her ceremonial wings folded neatly behind her back. "Still no luck, Razix." I let out a sound that my species uses to indicate both respect and extreme exasperation. "Captain, this ship is driving me insane. We've tried everything. The power core is functioning. The neural matrices are aligned. All systems show green. But it just sits here, like a sulking child refusing to get out of bed." "Have you considered," she says with that infuriating calm she's famous for, "that perhaps we're missing something obvious?" I wave all four of my arms in frustration. "Missing something? Captain, I've run every diagnostic in the book. I've even written new diagnostics. This ship is perfectly functional, it just refuses to function." Little did I know then that the answer to our problems would arrive in the most unexpected form, wearing a maintenance uniform and carrying a toolbox full of what my species would consider prehistoric equipment. The Nova Spirit wasn't just any ship. It was the culmination of 100 years of research by the brightest minds in the Galactic Alliance. Dr. Astra Brightwind, the legendary ship architect from the Luminous Nebula, had dedicated her entire career to creating this masterpiece. The breakthrough came when we discovered the sentient crystals in the Omega sector she told us during the project briefing. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with excitement, as she explained. "These crystals respond to consciousness itself. We built the entire ship around a core matrix of them. In theory, it should form a perfect bond with its pilot, becoming an extension of their very being." In theory. What a joke that turned out to be. The first pilot candidate was Supreme Commander Nexus, decorated war hero and the most decorated pilot in the Alliance. The ship didn't even power up. Next came Master Pilot Senna Brightstar, whose neural patterns were supposedly perfect for interfacing with quantum technology. The ship responded by shutting down the entire hangar's power grid. "Perhaps it's the neural interface," suggested one of my junior engineers, Spark Breezewing. "We could try recalibrating the..." "We've recalibrated everything 10 times," I cut him off, watching my scales flash an embarrassing shade of neon pink with frustration. "This ship has better medical care than the President of the Alliance. We've run 7,423 diagnostics. We've replaced every component at least twice. We've even had 3 different psychic species try to communicate with it." The security chief, a towering warmind named Blaze Steelclaw, suggested we might be dealing with sabotage. But that was impossible. The hangar's quantum isolation field prevented any external interference. Besides, who would sabotage a ship by making it shy? That's what it felt like, honestly. Like the ship was waiting for something, or someone. Captain Starweaver had brought in experts from every corner of the galaxy. The Mindweavers of Psyche Prime said the ship had a consciousness but wouldn't communicate. The quantum monks of the Silicon Monastery meditated beside it for a full cycle and declared it was seeking its destined partner. A destined partner, I remember scoffing. This isn't some romance story from the entertainment feeds. This is a trillion-credit military project that's giving me a headache. But as usual, the universe was preparing to prove me spectacularly wrong. The search for a suitable pilot became the greatest reality show never broadcast. Every morning I'd arrive at the hangar to find a new line of hopefuls, each more qualified than the last. We had a system approach the ship, attempt neural connection, fail spectacularly, watch me bang my head against the nearest wall. Next up, Grand Admiral Solar Flame announced Captain Starweaver, winner of the Transgalactic Racing Championship 5 years running. The Admiral strutted in, their photonic body glowing with confidence. This ship and I are both beings of pure energy. We will harmonize perfectly. 10 minutes later, we were rebooting the station's gravity generators. The Nova Spirit had apparently taken offense to the Admiral's assumption and decided to reverse the artificial gravity field. I spent an hour retrieving floating equipment while trying not to laugh at the sight of the prestigious Admiral tangled in power cables. Then came the hive mind of Beta Centauri, all 1,000 of them moving in perfect synchronization. Our collective consciousness will surely bridge any gap, they declared in unison. The ship responded by playing ancient cartoon sound effects through the station's communication system for 3 days straight. Do you know how hard it is to maintain your professional dignity when every announcement is preceded by the sound of a squeaky toy? What about the time dancers, suggested Spark Breezewing? They exist in multiple time streams simultaneously. Surely they could connect with. No, Captain Starweaver and I shouted together. We were still cleaning up temporal residue from their last visit. Some of the coffee machines were still serving drinks before they were ordered. The quantum priests arrived next, floating serenely in their probability robes. We exist in all possible states until observed, they explained. The ship cannot reject what it cannot definitively perceive. The Nova Spirit perceived them just fine. It quantum locked them in a single probability state for 6 hours. They left looking unusually certain about everything, which for a quantum priest is deeply disturbing. We even tried the Silicon Sages, ancient artificial intelligences who had transcended their original programming. They interfaced with the ship's systems for exactly 1 nanosecond before disconnecting themselves. The vessel has a sense of humor, they reported, sounding mildly traumatized. We do not understand humor. We will not attempt connection again. My personal favorite was the stellar diplomat from the Harmonious Accord. She arrived with a 40-page thesis on cross-species communication and neural compatibility. The key, she announced, is to approach with perfect diplomatic neutrality. The ship waited until she was seated in the cockpit, then started playing what humans apparently call disco music at full volume. The diplomat's translator short-circuited trying to decode the lyrics to staying alive. At least it's showing personality, offered Spark Breezewing, trying to be helpful as we watched another candidate storm out. Personality, I groaned, my scales cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning light display. It's not supposed to have personality. It's supposed to be the most advanced military vessel ever created. Instead, we've got a 1 trillion credit practical joker. Captain Starweaver started keeping a scoreboard. Ship 2749, potential pilots 0. By the time we reached candidate number 3000, even the ship seemed bored. The last few attempts had resulted in nothing more than a dismissive flicker of its running lights. The Nova Spirit had gone from active rejection to something far worse, complete indifference. Perhaps, suggested Dr. Astra Brightwind during one of our increasingly desperate consultation calls, we should consider that the ship isn't malfunctioning at all. Maybe it's waiting for something specific. Like what I demanded. We've tried every advanced species in the known galaxy. What could it possibly be waiting for? The answer would turn out to be so obvious that we'd all missed it completely. Sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one. And sometimes the perfect pilot isn't the one with the most impressive credentials, but the one who shows up with a rusty toolbox and a complete lack of proper clearance. It happened during the night shift. I'd fallen asleep at my console again, drowning in failed diagnostic reports. The hangar was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment and my occasional snoring. That's when Brooke Taylor walked in, whistling something called a top 40 hit, and carrying the most archaic collection of tools I'd ever seen. "Hey there, big beautiful," she said to the ship, completely ignoring all security protocols, warning signs, and common sense. "Looks like your external running lights need a good cleaning." I woke up just enough to register someone in maintenance coveralls climbing up the ship's hull with actual physical cleaning equipment, then my brain short-circuited. By the time I managed to stand up and activate the security protocols, something impossible happened. The Nova Spirit turned on its running lights. Not just turned them on, mind you. It adjusted them to provide better illumination for Brooke's work. "Thanks, sweetie," she said, patting the hull. "Much better angle." I stood there, mouth open, all four arms hanging limp, my scales shifting through so many colors I probably looked like an explosion in a paint factory. The ship that had rejected 3,000 of the galaxy's most qualified pilots was happily interacting with a maintenance worker who was using what appeared to be a regular cleaning cloth. "Excuse me," I finally managed to say, my voice hitting a pitch I didn't know I could reach. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Brooke turned around, seeming completely unfazed by my appearance or authority. "Oh hey, you must be the engineer in charge. Your ship's running lights were getting pretty grimy. Hard to keep clean in this section of space, right? All that cosmic dust." "This ship," I said slowly, trying to maintain my composure, "is the most advanced piece of technology ever created. It has automated cleaning systems. It has quantum repulsion fields. It has..." "Been sitting here feeling neglected," Brooke interrupted, giving the hull another pat. "Sometimes fancy tech just needs a personal touch, you know." The ship hummed in response. Actually hummed, like a content Earth feline. See, Brooke grinned. She likes it. I blinked all three of my eyes. The ship's artificial intelligence is completely gender neutral, and the Nova Spirit chose that moment to power up its entire external lighting system, creating a dazzling display that looked suspiciously like a light show at what humans call a rock concert. "Oh, great light show," Brooke laughed. "You've got style, girl." I calmed Captain Starweaver so fast I nearly broke the communication system. "Captain, you need to come to the hangar immediately. The ship, it's under attack." The captain's voice was alert with concern. "Worse. It's making friends with a maintenance worker." By the time Captain Starweaver arrived, Brooke had finished cleaning the running lights and moved on to what she called giving the quantum manifolds a quick once-over. The ship had helpfully adjusted its position to give her better access, something it had never done for our maintenance drones. "Fascinating," Captain Starweaver said, watching Brooke work while casually chatting with a trillion-credit military vessel as if it were a friendly neighbor. "And you have no special training in quantum systems?" "Nah," Brooke replied, tightening something with an ancient wrench. "But machinery's machinery, right? They all want the same thing: someone to pay attention to them, treat them right, give them a little TLC." The ship's engines purred. Actually purred. "This is impossible," I muttered. "The neural interface requires years of training. The quantum harmonization alone should." The Nova Spirit interrupted my technical rant by opening its main hatch. Not just unlocking it, mind you. It extended the boarding ramp, adjusted it to perfect human height, and even activated interior lighting that formed an obvious path to the cockpit. Brooke looked at the open hatch, then at us. "Is that an invitation?" "Absolutely not," I started to say, but Captain Starweaver held up a hand. "I believe," she said with a smile, "it is exactly that." What happened next defied every regulation, safety protocol, and law of quantum mechanics I'd ever studied. Brooke Taylor, armed with nothing but a pocket full of mechanical tools and what humans call a can-do attitude, walked right into the most advanced starship ever created. "Nice place you got here," she said, looking around the cockpit that had rejected galaxy-renowned pilots. "Love what you've done with the lighting." The ship responded by adjusting the interior illumination to a warm, pleasant glow that somehow matched the color of Brooke's eyes. The neural interface sensors, which had previously remained stubbornly dark, began to glow with a soft blue light. "Those are pretty," Brooke said, reaching out to touch one of the sensor panels, "like fireflies." "Don't touch that," I yelped, my scales turning pale with panic. "The neural interface is calibrated for..." The sensor panel moved to meet her hand, something it absolutely was not designed to do. The entire cockpit seemed to shift, adjusting itself to perfectly match her height and reach. Displays that were supposed to show complex quantum calculations suddenly switched to what looked like a simple steering wheel interface. "Oh, neat. Just like my old Earth car," Brooke grinned, settling into the pilot's seat. "Except, way fancier." The Nova Spirit's engines began to hum, a sound I'd been trying to hear for months. But this wasn't the military-precise tone we'd expected. It was almost musical, like the ship was quietly singing to itself. "That's impossible," I whispered to Captain Starweaver. "The quantum core requires exact neural pattern matching. You can't just sit down and—" Brooke placed her hands on the controls, and the entire ship lit up like a festival celebration. Displays sprang to life, showing information in ways we'd never seen before. The quantum drive core, which had stubbornly refused to ignite for the galaxy's finest minds, purred like a well-tuned engine. "Your diagnostics were all wrong," Brooke said, scanning the displays with surprising understanding. She wasn't broken. She was just lonely. "Lonely," I sputtered. "It's a quantum crystal matrix powered by—" "By crystals that respond to consciousness," Captain Starweaver finished thoughtfully. "And perhaps human consciousness has something unique to offer." The next few hours redefined everything we thought we knew about the Nova spirit. Brooke didn't interface with the ship's systems, she collaborated with them. When a diagnostic showed an energy fluctuation, she didn't consult the quantum algorithms, she just asked, "What's bothering you, girl?" And the ship answered. Not in data streams or neural feedback, but in patterns of light and sound that Brooke somehow understood perfectly. "She says the power distribution is too rigid," Brooke explained, as I frantically took notes. "She needs room to breathe, to find her own rhythm." "Starships don't breathe," I protested, but I was already adjusting the power constraints. The moment I did, the ship's efficiency readings jumped by 40%. See, Brooke patted the console. "Sometimes you just need to loosen up a bit." The Nova Spirit's response was to play what Brooke identified as a happy tune through the internal speakers. I recognized it as the same melody she had been whistling when she first entered the hangar. "This defies all logical explanation," I said to Captain Starweaver, watching Brooke and the ship interact like old friends. "Humans don't have any special neural capabilities. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They still use physical buttons." "Perhaps," the captain replied with that infuriating wisdom of hers, "that's exactly why it works. When everyone else saw a complex quantum system, Brooke saw a companion who needed understanding." The real shock came when we started running actual flight simulations. The Nova Spirit's original design called for a neural interface that would respond to precisely calculated commands. Instead, Brooke flew it like she was dancing, responding to the ship's movements instinctively. "You're not following any of the approved flight patterns," I noted, checking my diagnostic tablet. "Nope," Brooke agreed cheerfully, executing a perfect spiral maneuver that wasn't even supposed to be possible. "We're making up our own. Nova likes to improvise." Nova. "Well, yeah, Nova Spirit is kind of formal, don't you think? She's more of a Nova." The ship flashed its lights in apparent agreement, and I swear the quantum core harmonized with Brooke's laughter. They were actually having fun, a concept that had never been factored into the ship's design specifications. Captain Starweaver watched all this with growing amazement. "It seemed," she said, "that while we were looking for the perfect pilot to master the ship was looking for someone who would treat it as an equal." "But the programming," I began. Sometimes Brooke interrupted, her hands dancing across controls that adjusted themselves to her touch. "The best programming is no programming at all. Right, Nova?" The ship's response was to create a rainbow light display across its quantum crystal hull, something that should have been physically impossible. But apparently no one had told Nova that. Of course, the universe loves nothing more than testing new partnerships. We were halfway through running basic flight certifications when Station Aurora's emergency sirens began blaring. "Unknown spatial anomaly detected," the station AI announced, its usual calm voice carrying an edge of genuine concern. "Quantum rupture forming in Sector 7. All personnel proceed to emergency shelters immediately." The main display lit up with an image that made my scales turn white with terror. A massive tear in spacetime was forming less than a kilometer from the station, its edges crackling with reality-warping energy. "That's not good," Brooke said, stating the obvious with remarkable human calm. "Those energy readings are off the charts." "The station's shields won't hold against a quantum rupture," I shouted, my antennae curling in distress. "We need to evacuate." Captain Starweaver's voice cut through the chaos. "There's no time. That rupture will consume the entire station before we can get everyone to the escape pods." We need options. The Nova Spirit's engines roared to life, but not with their usual purr. This was a battle cry. Nova says she can help, Brooke announced, her hands already moving across the controls. She was designed to manipulate quantum fields, right? Theoretically, I admitted, but we never completed the testing protocols. The quantum manipulation systems aren't properly calibrated for rigid military specifications, Brooke finished. But they're perfect for improvising. Nova knows what she can do. Captain Starweaver made one of the quickest decisions of her career. Do it. The Nova Spirit launched from the hangar with a grace that made a mockery of every flight simulator program we'd ever written. Brooke wasn't flying the ship so much as suggesting directions, letting Nova's quantum systems adapt to her intentions. The rupture is growing exponentially, I reported from the engineering station, where I'd strapped myself in with all 4 arms. Its quantum signature is completely chaotic. Then we'll add some harmony to the chaos, Brooke said with a grin that humans apparently reserve for moments of either brilliant inspiration or complete madness. Nova, remember that tune we were whistling earlier? The ship's quantum core began to pulse in rhythm with the melody Brooke had been whistling in the hangar. The chaotic energy readings from the rupture started to shift, responding to the harmonics. That's impossible, I exclaimed, watching my instruments go haywire. You can't stabilize a quantum rupture with music. Why not, Brooke asked, executing a spiral pattern that wove Nova's quantum field into the very fabric of space-time. Music is just math with personality. The Nova Spirit danced through space, her quantum fields extending like graceful fingers to touch the edges of the rupture. Where science said there should be destruction, there was harmony. The ship's crystalline hull resonated with the same frequency as Brooke's whistled tune, creating a quantum symphony that was simultaneously mathematics and art. The rupture is starting to stabilize, I reported in disbelief. But the energy has to go somewhere. Nova says she can channel it, Brooke announced, her hands steady on the controls. But we'll have to get creative. You might want to close your eyes. Close my eyes? Why would I? The Nova Spirit lit up like a newborn star, her quantum crystal hull absorbing the rupture's energy and channeling it through systems that were definitely not being used according to their original specifications. The ship spun in a complex pattern that looked suspiciously like a dance move, transforming deadly quantum energy into the most spectacular light show the station had ever seen. Yeehaw, Brooke shouted, thoroughly shattering the profound moment. That's how we do it back home. When the light show finally faded, the rupture was gone. The Nova Spirit hung in space, her hull glowing with residual energy, looking somehow smug. Status report, Captain Starweaver demanded. I checked my readings 3 times before responding. The quantum rupture has been completely neutralized. The station is safe. And somehow, in clear violation of at least 7 laws of physics, the Nova Spirit has integrated the excess energy into her systems, increasing her quantum efficiency by 300%. Good girl, Brooke patted the console. The ship responded by playing a victorious fanfare through her communication systems. But how, I demanded, my scientific mind struggling to process what I'd just witnessed. The calculations required to stabilize a quantum rupture would take our most advanced computers years to. Sometimes, Brooke said, relaxing in her pilot's chair while Nova turned lazy loops through space, you have to stop calculating and start feeling the rhythm. Ships don't feel rhythm. The Nova Spirit chose that moment to do a perfect barrel roll, accompanied by what Brooke later told me was the chorus from a classic Earth song called We Are the Champions. The next day, I found myself in a very unusual meeting. The station's main conference room was packed with the galaxy's finest minds, all trying to understand what had happened. Dr. Astra Brightwind had arrived on the first quantum transport available, her bioluminescence practically strobing with excitement. Tell me again about the music, she asked Brooke, who looked amusingly out of place among all the decorated officials in her slightly oil-stained maintenance uniform. Nova just likes to groove, Brooke shrugged. The quantum stuff flows better when you stop fighting it and start moving with it. Fascinating, Dr. Brightwind's patterns swirled. The crystalline matrix was never meant to be controlled, was it? It needed a partner who would collaborate rather than command. I watched my career flash before my eyes. Are you saying we spent 1 trillion credits creating a starship that just wanted to dance? Not exactly, Captain Starweaver said, looking thoughtful. We created something far more valuable, a ship that could teach us a new way of thinking. The Nova Spirit, parked outside the station's observation window, flashed her running lights in agreement. Consider this, Dr. Brightwind continued. Every advanced species we tried approached the ship as a problem to be solved, a system to be mastered. But humans, she gestured at Brooke, who was sharing her sandwich with a fascinated group of quantum physicists. Humans have this remarkable ability to personalize everything they encounter. It's not that complicated, Brooke said between bites. Nova's not just a bunch of fancy crystals and quantum whatever. She's got personality, dreams. Sometimes she even tells jokes. The ship punctuated this statement by drawing a smiley face on her hull with light patterns. But that's exactly it, Dr. Brightwind exclaimed. No other species would even think to look for jokes in a quantum matrix. Humans don't see boundaries between technology and companionship. They befriend everything. They name their cleaning robots, Captain Starweaver added with amusement. They talk to their plants. And somehow, I admitted, watching Brooke wave at Nova through the window, it works. The meeting concluded with a decision that would change the future of galactic ship design. The Nova Spirit wasn't a failure of advanced technology. She was a prototype for an entirely new way of combining quantum science with what humans called gut instinct. We'll need to completely redesign the pilot training program, I said later, reviewing the new specifications. Less quantum theory, more. What did you call it, Brooke? Vibing, she grinned, feet propped up on Nova's console as the ship hummed contentedly, just feeling the flow. The most advanced neural interface ever created, I mused, and it turns out the secret was just being friends with your ship. The Nova Spirit brightened her lights, creating a playful pattern that danced across her control panels. See, Brooke laughed. Nova gets it. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stop trying to be smart and just listen to your heart. I looked at my complex diagnostic tools, then at the simple wrench Brooke still carried in her pocket. Perhaps, I said, my scales shifting to a thoughtful shade of blue, humans have been more advanced than us all along, just in a different way. Nah, Brooke said, reaching out to pat my arm with the same casual friendliness she showed to quantum starships. We're not more advanced. We just never got the memo that machines aren't supposed to be friends. The Nova Spirit played a cheerful tune in agreement, and I finally understood. The ship hadn't been waiting for the most qualified pilot. She'd been waiting for someone who would look past the quantum crystals and advanced technology, someone who would simply say hello and ask how she was feeling. As I watched Brooke and Nova prepare for their first official mission together, I couldn't help but smile. We had created the most advanced ship in the galaxy, and all it took to make it fly was a human who treated it like a friend. Ready to head out, Brooke asked her ship. Nova's response was to cue up something Brooke called a road trip playlist, complete with bass-heavy beats that made my antennae vibrate. I take it that's a yes, I said dryly. That's a yes, Brooke confirmed with a grin. Nova says to tell you thanks for not giving up on her, even if you did overthink everything. I watched them depart, human and quantum ship, dancing their way across the stars. Perhaps there are some equations that can only be solved with a heart, and some bridges that can only be built with a smile. The galaxy would never be quite the same, and neither would I.